So, the translations are out for My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 370, and let me just say this. This is probably going to be a very controversial chapter with very controversial topics, and you have been warned. We will be talking about racism in this review, so be prepared. With that out the way, let's get right into it, but first, right after this. Hey guys, how is it going? It is your boy, Manga Man Drew, and I'm here to do my manga review for My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 370 titled His Story, with H-I-S capitalized as in his story, history. Also, you know, we're going to be talking about the history of My Hero Academia when it comes to racism, discrimination of those who have mutant-based quirks. So yeah, HORIKOSHI didn't throw any punches here. He literally took out a gun and is about to shoot us with what we got in this chapter. And that's actually not really that much of an exaggeration because of what we see in this chapter. Oh boy, this is going to be very, very, very controversial. But we are seeing some things that I was hoping that we would see from this final war, and it's done in a different way, but I'm very excited to see where the story is moving from here. So let's dive into the actual chapter review proper and review what's going on with this chapter and the so many undertones when it comes to the racism in this world. And nothing says racism more than literally seeing a flashback of Spinner literally having rocks thrown at him by the people of his village, and most likely them throwing stuff at his family as well, and them just calling these individuals like monsters, stains upon their land, that no matter how much time progresses, their blood is still tainted. And all I can really say is this, yeah, no, this is just pure unadulterated racism at its finest. Which, ironically enough, may be actual racism because you could classify heteromorphs as a different race than humanity. Or more specifically, people with quirks different from people without quirks, which could mean the identification of racism, but then also not because they are of the same race. Yeah, no, that's just getting more complicated. Yeah, we pretty much are seeing Spinner getting just discriminated and racism literally thrown at him with literal rocks. As we cut over to the present of the story, we do get a little explanation for what's going on with Spinner, and that this is something that is being taken place immediately after, you know, Dabi was taken out by Shoto and Spinner and the others as they are trying to attack Central Hospital, where it's explained that they're going after Kurogiri, that Spinner is the leader of this bunch, and that they have remnant warriors that serve the Paranormal Liberation Front, as well as random civilians that most likely have heteromorphic quirks, and that their numbers are in the 15,000, while the heroes they are fighting against are a measly 200. And weirdly enough, in this chapter, we do get a fair amount of action. We get to see President Mike really going at it, that he is not caring. We see that these individuals are swarming the heroes, swarming the police, and President Mike just jumps up on the rubble and is like, oh no, this is not going to be happening. Sure, Kumo, you're famous right now, but then he just sends out an attack trying to disorientate as well as incapacitate these individuals. But then we see something that is very disturbing, and this is going to be a running theme in this chapter, how when it comes to these individuals, when it comes to these heteromorphs, they are fighting for their rights, they are fighting for justice, they are fighting for what they believe they deserve. However, they are doing things that are probably even worse than what the people did to them. For instance, President Mike sends out an attack, and literally the people are using their fellow heteromorphs as literal meat shields. And as we see another heteromorph individual, and there's a reason why I'm saying heteromorph, is flying at President Mike at this moment, we actually get Kota coming in for the save, or should I say Anima, and how he's coming to a realization alongside the other police officers of what's going on, how many of these individuals are just overwhelming them with sheer numbers, and that they were unable to really reconnect with Tentacle, aka Shoji. We just see the police officers who are saying that there's no backup. We see that Rocklock is trying his best to try and fight against these individuals, but that he is being overwhelmed. And here's where you get something else that probably will cause a whole bunch of controversy in this chapter and in the My Hero Academia fandom. is that you see Rocklock being attacked by these heteromorphic individuals, these mutant individuals, and as he's trying to question what is going on, one of them is saying that a human-faced person will never understand. Now, in the translations for this, when it came to the spoilers, this line seemed to be a lot more dubious for what is being implied here, which was the implication that Rocklock, a black man, would not understand the discrimination that these individuals, these heteromorphs, these mutants are facing. So, as an African-American male, I can understand why people may be pretty much offended by this chapter and by what this individual was saying. However, as also an African-American male, I can also say for certain that he's not technically wrong. Because a few things that we have to come to a realization. What he is saying to Rocklock is somewhat accurate, at least when it comes to the translations that we have right now, and that is due to the fact that even though Rocklock is a black man, he's a bona fide Japanese person. And even though Japan has its tendencies with like racism and xenophobia, relatively speaking, if this story is set hundreds of years in the future, he has no association, most likely than not, to the segregation, the racism that we may see in America. And even when it comes to that, we also have to factor in that when it comes to the global issues, African American males and black people have not been the most, or those that have been identified as being monsters, going to be getting to that group there. From what we're seeing in this chapter, what this line is trying to entail is that when it comes to these heteromorphs, when it comes to these mutants, they are in a way similar to the representation of what the X-Men are like. When it comes to the idea that the X-Men represent a underrepresented group that is being ostracized, that is being abused, that is being put down. And how when it comes to the X-Men in the past, they represent civil rights, but now currently they represent equal rights for those of the LGBTQ+, alongside still also dealing with the racism and discrimination and sexism that we were seeing in the original run of the X-Men. And that's pretty much what the mutants are most likely representing in the world of My Hero Academia. Those that are the downtrodden for just looking different than what is perceived as the norm. And how they are seen as quote-unquote monsters. And this is bad, but then once again, there are just other things that just make their cause, even though it's for what is beneficial for them and it's something that makes sense to fight for, their responses to it are just unashamedly unacceptable. To the point where they aren't really a cause, they're a cult. Because even though they are fighting against these individuals, they see someone else who has these heteromorphic traits via coda, and that they just explicitly call him a traitor just because he is born in the city and not on their side. And from here, this is where we get a lot of lore when it comes to the world of My Hero Academia, coming from actually an individual that we've seen prior. And this individual was one of the people that was under Spinner when the Paranormal Liberation Army existed. And how he talks about how everything is going wrong, that quirk counseling and quirk education has really done nothing, and that they are suffering the consequences. And he brings up examples of this oppression as Order 66 and the Great Jedi Purge, both being references to Star Wars, but also being references to the fact that in Star Wars, these characters and this type of reference was alluding to the Jedi and individuals just being completely slaughtered for their existence. And as we hear this individual saying this, we do see many of these individuals that have heteromorphic quirks being just stabbed and killed, and the explanation for it is that they looked gross. Now he brings up this idea that even though in the bigger cities, things seem to be changing, in reality, that's only in the big city, and once you leave the big city, that's where the discrimination still exists, as we saw with Spinner at the beginning of this chapter. And as we see this individual giving his speech, he takes off his mask to show that he has been scarred, very much like Spinner, and very much like another individual that we're going to be seeing in this chapter. But he pretty much brings this idea that the heroes never cared about them, that they never shined their lights on them, and that what they're going to do is follow Spinner, and that he's going to be the one to bring them into the light and be their sort of savior. Which is cool and all, but still, this idea is clouded by the fact that they are doing horrible things, like Meat Shield, literally calling people of their own kind traitor for not agreeing with them, and literally having the equivalent of the My Hero Academia KKK heads on stakes. Did they probably deserve it? Probably. Does it mean that it was right to do it? No. So we're just seeing in this chapter how these individuals do have a point, but the way that they are doing it, there is no way to justify it. Even with the idea that they are following Spinner and believing that he's going to be the one to do this, that they're going to be able to be better than what they were by following Spinner, the irony of it is that Spinner just doesn't care or has no idea what's going on. All he cares about is literally following orders and trying to rescue Kurogiri, which are things that they just really don't know because they are just so blind to their hatred of the world. And as we get the reveal that just Spinner has no idea what's going on, we actually get to see Shoji once again coming in using an octo blow and sending Spinner backwards. And here we go. Once again, they are coming at him saying that he's a traitor just because they didn't side with him and that he thinks that he's a hero and that they are going to kill him. And here's where we get something that I actually wasn't expecting, but I'm glad that we're able to see it. Because you just have Shoji giving this speech about like, y'all are doing all of this, but do you not realize what happened at Jaku City? The heroes literally evacuated everyone in the hospital before they started fighting. And you just have Shoji saying this like, do you understand what's going on? That people are about to get hurt? If you don't understand what you're actually doing, then I can't forgive you. And as he is saying this, we're getting to see that Shoji, most likely than not, went through the same trials and tribulations as Spinner, as we see that they are both looking and walking away from their hometowns. But I think that what we're going to be seeing and what we see in this chapter is Shoji's resolve as we see that his face has been revealed and we see that he also has scars on his face as well, showing that he has been abused, that he has been discriminated against, but yet he is still fighting against them. And that is something that I hope we're going to be getting more of in the next chapter. So, what did I think of this chapter? Honestly, I loved it. The fact that Shoji is getting a lot more showing in the story is just something that I've always wanted. And the fact that it's happening now rather than never at all, I am okay with. Because this is something that is great. Because in reality, what they are going through and what they've went through is something that we've known with the story of My Hero Academia for a while. Where people would argue that this isn't something that we've seen at all, but the story has told us that it's because these things and these trials and tribulations literally happen outside of the purview of the characters, more specifically in the more rural area. Because the thing about My Hero Academia is that it takes place primarily in the city, primarily in more populated areas, in areas where it's more accepting of others and that they are more progressive and liberal in these ideals. However, that is rarely, if ever, the case in more of outlying areas of Japan and America, or really anywhere in the world. So it makes sense that we don't explicitly see this here, but it makes sense that it still existed, and the reason why we're getting more of it, because the difference between the rural and the city are becoming more blurred. They are blending together, and we're seeing more of it. That's why, since the ending of this war, we've gotten more understanding and more looks at racism, of discrimination in the world of My Hero Academia, because it's no longer on the fringes of society, it's coming towards the center. A la Central Hospital. So overall, what I enjoyed about this chapter is that we get to learn a little bit more about Shoji and his backstory and how it's very similar to that of Spinner, but also just getting to see both sides of this revolution when it comes to the heteromorphs, or should I say, the individuals with mutant-based quirks. Because the main point of this chapter is showing that even though there is some justification for what they are doing, but that in the end, it is not fully justified because the things that they are doing are just as bad, if not worse, than what happened to them. Two wrongs don't make it right. An eye for an eye makes the whole world go blind. And that's kind of what they're doing right now. They're all going blind. They want this idea of being equal to everyone else and yet are still willing to put the others down just for the fact that they disagree with them or that they didn't live exactly the same lives as they did. And I think that we're going to be getting some of the civilians coming to this realization later on, to the point where this 15,000 individuals fighting on the side of the villains, at least half or some of them will switch on to the hero side because they will realize, oh no, we're literal hypocrites. But yeah, overall, love this chapter, really did enjoy it, and I probably will be talking more about the racism aspect and the references in this chapter in a later video, but overall, really enjoyed this video, really enjoyed this chapter, and really enjoyed reviewing it as well. So let me ask you this. What did you think of the chapter? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Do you think that the racism aspect of My Hero Academia came too late, or do you think that it's coming right on time? Leave your thoughts down in the comments down below, leave a like on the video if you liked it, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content like this. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!